Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 14.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my God, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Small Biz Life. I am your co-host, Kristen Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And we are small business owners digging into the weeds to help you grow and thrive in your business.
Excellent.
Not fun.
That is super duper fun.
Yeah, so this week's episode, we're going to try to introduce some fun things into the episode. And as you're starting to plan for 2016, we're going to talk about something that you may not be considering before you make your goals.
Really?
Yeah.
What's that?
We'll get there. It's a surprise.
Oh, I'm so excited.
You'll have to listen. Okay, so we're going to start this episode like we start each week with what we found in the news this week. And what did you find?
I found an article this week from torquemag.io, and it is 5 ways most people forget to secure their WordPress site.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Not fun, but interesting.
Not fun, but interesting. And I will try and keep it short. These are some things that maybe you've not thought about. WordPress security is important because it is the most popular platform, which means when you're the most popular, you are the most popular to be targeted by hackers, which is why it's important to update and why it's important to make sure you have decent security. And the first one is use a VPN when on open networks. And this is one that frustrates me as an IT person, and people do this all the time. They think nothing about it because they're just updating their blog. But really, if you're using any kind of secured site, that you care about not being hacked, if you're at an open VPN, which would be something like a free one at Starbucks, maybe your cable company has one. If it's not your private network that you're connecting to, or it's not a private connection, make sure to use a VPN. And a VPN, can cost you as little as about $4 a month, according to one in the article here, called Cloak. And essentially it creates a tunnel from your computer to where you're talking to. Oh. It's sort of like SSL does the same thing, but this will create the tunnel before you start going onto the internet. That way people can't intercept your traffic and learn your password and usernames. So
it creates like a little bubble around you when you're in a public Wi-Fi area.
Exactly.
Oh, that's cool.
And then another one would be to add an SSL certificate to your site. A lot of WordPress sites don't do this. There are some advantages SEO purposes to this now as well. Google likes HTTPS sites over HTTP sites. There are solutions like if you buy a certificate or you get one with your hosting sometimes, you can use those certificates. Or there is one of my favorite nonprofits, the Electronic Freedom Foundation, also has a project called HTTPS Everywhere, which is supposed to make it easy and available to people, because right now it's very expensive, or at least traditionally it's been very expensive and somewhat of a scam, these certificates. But people who are worried about privacy, people who are worried about security on the internet are really pushing encryption, unlike most politicians. And then use a unique password. And this is one I tell everyone to do. We have get a software piece of software, Vault, if you have trouble keeping track of them, which I could understand.
Like LastPass.
Like LastPass. That's a wonderful one. And there's some other good ones out there too, though. If you do that, you can create a unique password. LastPass actually has a feature that will help. It will grade every site you log into on the strength of your password and on the uniqueness of it. And you can actually use that feature if you have some extra time to do maybe a 25-minute Pomodoro once a week, just to help strengthen your passwords. They say use strong passwords. There's a lot of, if you use something like LastPass, it's very easy to do. You can just generate one very simply. On other sites, it might be more difficult than that, or if you're doing it on your own, because they're hard to remember, but make them as long as possible too, because special characters don't mean much. Random characters don't mean much if they brute force attack it. So the longer your password, the better.
And LastPass was really inexpensive. I think it was like $12 a year. It was something.
A no-brainer. And I don't know if it was
so cheap.
A deal we got, but I don't even think it was. I think it was just like, we're getting this because I've just been reading too much negative stuff in the news.
Yeah, so for $12 a year, it's a no-brainer. And we'll link LastPass into the show notes.
If you FTP information back and forth to your blog site, stop that. Don't do that. FTP is very old. It should not be used over public internet ever. There is something called SFTP, which is a secure version, which this article will help let you know how to do that as well.
Awesome. And we will link that article into the show notes. And if you have any questions, you can either contact us through the website or join the Facebook community and get involved in the discussion there.
Go community.
Huzzah!
Huzzah.
Okay, so my article this week is much more fun. I've been reading a lot lately about the coloring book craze.
What?
Adults are coloring again.
Like Snoopy books?
Well, they're making coloring books for grown-ups.
Well, I'm hip. I knew that.
So, which I actually have a friend, Scott Kuzo, actually makes coloring books. So shout out to Scott. And I'm going to link some of his coloring books in the show notes so you can check them out. But essentially, they're creating coloring books for grown-ups.
Wow.
And the reason that they're doing this actually started, I would say back in 2006, that they started looking at craftiness and what that does to your brain. So things like painting, knitting, crocheting, what effect does that have on your brain when you're really stressed out? And doing something creative has a lot of the same characteristics as meditation.
Meditation, really?
Yeah. And I know a lot of people have trouble with meditation, but they'd like to find something that has the same properties.
Does not go well with Western culture.
No.
I mean, we're just trained, especially in America, to be very, very ADD.
Yes. So there have been lots of studies on coloring and the effects of coloring on your brain. They did a study in adults 65 and over that engaged in creative activities, and they found that overall they had better health, fewer doctor visits, used less medication, and had fewer overall health problems.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty freaking impressive.
Yeah. So, what they say in this article in USA Today is that it helps ease your mind. It helps you focus. It helps you be more creative. And it helps push negative thoughts and worries out of your mind.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All from a little coloring. Who would have thunk it?
Yep. And they said, it doesn't, don't focus on, coloring in the lines, because then we get stressed out about that. Just kind of like let your mind go and see, where you go. They also said in one of the articles that I read that it can tell you a lot about your mood depending on the colors that you use and the intensity that you're coloring with.
Now, I wonder if that's true for artists as well. I would imagine not. I mean, maybe just sketching or painting with outlines, but I think if you add lines that was not created by an artist, it might cause some stress. But I guess, this is why it's important to know yourself and see if it works for you and modify it the way it works best for you.
Yeah. So I think that that's awesome. I've actually, I've gotten a couple coloring books, and I find that if I'm really stressed out or my brain is going in too many different directions, even if I just spend like 10 minutes coloring a little bit, and I won't even like finish the picture. I'll pick something out of the book and I'll start working on it. And it really helps. It helps me get focused.
Cool. That is awesome.
Yeah. So if you have like a really hyperactive mind, this would be a great thing for you to try. So yeah, I like it. Coloring.
Who knew?
Who knew? I like it. I like it a lot. Okay, this week's topic, as we're getting to the end of 2015, a lot of the business owners I know are starting to plan for 2016. People are starting to write goals. They're starting to pick their word of the year. Before you start doing all that, though, I think that there's something else you need to do. Before you start creating your goals, picking your word, kind of setting the theme for 2016, I'd like you to consider doing one thing before you do all that. I'd like you to consider doing a SWOT analysis.
I don't know. I heard that was out of date.
No, I think the only people that think it's out of date are the people that are trying to replace it. So a SWOT analysis is a business tool that you use when you're trying to analyze your business. And it's really, really simple. Okay. You don't need a calculator. There's no mathing.
Well, some people will be very happy with that.
Yes. I know lots of people who would be happy with that. What SWOT stands for is strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. Okay. That's how you get SWOT. Okay. The strength and weakness portion, those are things that are internal to your business. Opportunities and threats are external to your business. So typically the way this is done is it's done, you create 4 blocks. You don't have to do it that way. You can just create a list. I would do no more than 3 to 5 in each category. Okay. Because if you start doing unlimited things, those of us that are kind of worriers, we're going to focus in on our weaknesses. We're going to focus in on the threats to our business. I want you to do 3 to 5 of each. Okay. And what I want you to do is take a piece of paper, write strengths, 1 through 5, write weaknesses 1 through 5, opportunities 1 through 5, threats 1 through 5. Okay. Got it?
Okay. Excellent. I have it right now.
Okay. Excellent. The first thing you want to do is you want to focus in on your strengths. Okay. And do strengths first, because if you do weaknesses first, you're going to put yourself in a bad headspace. Okay. So your strengths are your internal strengths of your business. Okay. So think about the assets that you have, the assets that your business has. This might be your particular area of knowledge. This could be the equipment that you have. So if you think about our podcast. So strengths is we've got 2 very knowledgeable co-hosts.
Excellent.
That's very helpful.
Check.
We have all the podcasting equipment that we need.
Yeah.
Well, you might disagree with that. I think we have all the podcasting equipment that we need. We have a great community of people that are sharing, right, our podcast. We have a lot of ideas. So it hasn't really been a struggle for us to come up with new topics.
No.
Right. So we're very creative people with our coloring books and our knitting and our writing. Okay. So those are some of the strengths that we have. So you want to think about what you currently have in place, things that are internal to your organization. And, those could be things like, you've got a really strong network. You have a lot of skills with social media. Okay. So write down your strengths. Then I want you to think about your weaknesses. Okay. So I know one of our weaknesses is time.
Yes.
Right. We wish we had more time. Another weakness for me is trying to organize all the different projects that I'm working on.
Yes.
Right. So that's another weakness I have. I would say I'm not the greatest podcast editor in the whole world. I know that for a fact.
I don't think any of those live in this house.
Yeah, no. I do the best I can with the tools that we have. So think about, weaknesses that you have. I'm terrible at staying consistent with social media.
Yes.
But luckily, we
have some tools to help.
We have some tools to help that. So, think about the weaknesses in your business. They might be organizational. They might be, that you hate the accounting side of things.
No one hates the accounting side of things.
Everybody loves the accounting side of things. No, I think I'm the only one who likes the accounting side of things. Most people dread that piece. Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
But I have systems in place that make it really easy.
Yes.
So that helps. So think about, and limit it to 3 to 5. If you find yourself, that you want to keep going with weaknesses, then try to pick the top 3 to 5.
Okay.
What are the 3 to 5 that are really like hurting your business from getting it to where you need it to be?
And I just got to step in at this point. There are two kinds of people I've met when talking about their own personal strengths and weaknesses. Some people are very, very good at knowing their strengths and are kind of blind to their weaknesses. And obviously the opposite way, where people can fill up 75 pieces of paper with the weaknesses and go, I can't think of any strengths. You have strengths, you have weaknesses, you have both. If you cannot get 3 to 5 of them, you are not really in touch with yourself. You don't really know enough about yourself, and you really got to stop, and you have to work on that, because everyone has both. The biggest businesses to the smallest businesses all have strengths and weaknesses.
Right. And that you have to be honest with yourself, because if you're not being honest with yourself, you're hurting your business.
Yeah.
You have to be able to honestly assess yourself and your business. Okay. Or else creating goals is not going to work. Creating a word of the year is not going to work. Creating a mission statement is not going to work. That's why I think that this is so important to put this down on paper, and don't just think about it, write it down. Okay. Because this is going to help you figure out what your goals should be for next year.
Oh, excellent.
Okay. So once you've done your strengths and weaknesses, now we're going to look outside the company. I want you to think about opportunities that are in the marketplace for your business. We just talked about coloring books, and I think my friend Scott, I talked about Scott Kuzo a minute ago. He did an awesome job saying, hey, this is just starting to kind of, come to the surface. People are really interested in coloring books. I'm going to create some coloring books. And he made some fantastic coloring books, and they're awesome, and they're so relaxing. But he looked at that opportunity and said, okay, I'm going to go for this to help grow my business. With us, one of my biggest struggles, we said one of my weaknesses is time. And so we thought, you know what? There's not really a podcast out there where people are talking about the everyday struggles of business.
Yes.
There's lots of podcasts that interview very successful business people, but there's nobody out there saying, here are some tips to make your business better. So we said, you know what, that's an opportunity. Why don't we start a podcast? And then we can reach more people. That was an opportunity that we took advantage of. Maybe there is a way that you explain your topic that nobody else does.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a hole in the market that you can fill.
Yes.
So think about...
Maybe there are 34 thought leaders, and you're taking an approach where you're someone trying to learn the area that you're trying to expand, and you take advantage of not being an expert, but being someone learning, and people can grow with your struggles. And there's an interest in those kind of stories too. So
my friend Ronnie Harden has really embraced Periscope and does a morning show every morning, except for Sunday, called Coffee Talk with Ronnie Harden. And she does a great show. She talks about books. She talks about struggles in life. And she saw that opportunity to use a new media and get it out there to people, and it's great. And I have coffee with, my friend Ronnie most
she's
mornings.
Going to have to get up earlier though, so she can do it when I go to work. And then she can just have it recorded for everyone else who's not awake at that point, which is probably most everyone.
No, I think 7:02 a.m. Central Time is a good time. Yeah, I think so.
I'm thinking 5:02.
Yeah, no.
Eastern Time.
No. Most people don't wake up as God early as you do.
Yeah, but that's for me. And then everyone else can see it recorded because that's what's important.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I want you to think about the opportunities that are out there in your marketplace. Where do you see holes? Where do you see places that you could inject yourself to grow your business? The last piece would be threats. Threats are things that can stop your growth or actually pull your business backwards. Okay. I don't want you to focus so much on if somebody else comes along and is bigger than me.
Yeah.
Okay. Think about what you're currently doing in your business and see what threats are out there. So for example, for a lot of small business owners, when Facebook changed their algorithm with pages, where, people were getting lots of traffic, lots of engagement with their pages, and then Facebook dialed that back, that screwed over a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, for one of my sites is about 90% Google search driven.
Yeah.
If Google changes the algorithm, that site could be completely screwed.
That's definitely a threat with that site because, we can't buy the kind of advertising that an organic search result can.
Exactly. So, that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking at this year is to try to diversify how the traffic is coming to my site to see if I can, branch out a little bit better so I'm not so reliant on Google. So, look at how you're getting new customers. Is the majority from a single source? I know a lot of people who love Pinterest.
Yeah.
And are using Pinterest to drive a lot of traffic to their sites. What happens if Pinterest goes away? What happens if Pinterest changes the way people engage with it? These are things you've got to consider. So when you think about threats, look at the big buckets that help, drive you new customers, get your word out there, and see if there are any possible threats there. Even things like, Jeff talked about website security.
Yeah.
I've had a whole bunch of friends this year who had their sites hacked.
Yeah.
Their sites were down for weeks, maybe a month or two. And now all that traffic that they had built up is gone. So I want you to really think about, threats like that and how they could impact your business. Okay. So think of 3 to 5 things. So now that you have the 4 components, you've got your strengths, you've got your weaknesses, you've got your opportunities and your threats. When you are setting your goals should be driven by what you put on that piece of paper. Maybe you look at your weaknesses and you say, you know what? I'm really not good at editing my podcast. I don't like editing my podcast. I don't have the time to edit my podcast. So I'm going to outsource that. Okay. Your weaknesses are going to be sources for you to look for either outsourcing or education.
Yes.
So if it's something, if you're not good at social media consistency, you can look at something like Edgar, which is a social media tool, which has reusable libraries. Yeah. And you build up a nice big library and then it'll just sort through those posts.
Or another good one is Buffer. And that's for the people, if one of your weaknesses is I spend too much time trolling through social media, you can use, and I love Buffer for this, you can just go through and buffer out things that you find and want to share out. That way it's coming out over time and you can build up. It's not as easy to use it like category and reusability wise. You can do it that way, but Edgar is definitely better for that. But Buffer is wonderful for I'm out there. I find something that is interesting and I can share it out over time to get the maximum exposure with it.
Yeah. So I want you to think about your weaknesses and determine which of those you want to address and you want to strengthen. Those should become some of your goals for 2016. I want you to look at your opportunities and look at the opportunities in conjunction with your strengths and ask yourself, how can I use my strengths to take advantage of some of these opportunities? And then finally look at the threats column and see how many of those you could address and create goals around those. So really what you're doing is you're taking the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats, and you are using those to create your 2016 goals.
Sounds good.
And that gives you better direction. It gives you better insight. Because I know a lot of times we do goal setting and you're like, okay, so I want to learn some new stuff in 2016. Okay, well, what do you want to learn? I don't know. I just want to learn some stuff. I want to read. I'm going to read 30 books in 2016. Well, what kind of books? Fiction books? Nonfiction books? What kind of books? Books that'll make me a better person. Okay, well, now you have a weaknesses list and a threats list, and you can try to educate yourself in those areas.
I'd recommend Lord of the Rings for that. That would help make you a better person.
Lord of the Rings will make you a better person. Okay.
Little person stepping up to do a big job that the bigger players in the world just can't handle.
That's right. It's character building, right? Actually, the Lord of the Rings is really good for building confidence in yourself. Right? Because that's really what the story is about.
Yeah, it's about the little people. Hobbits are the country bumpkins. They're the nobodies of society. And yet it's the hobbits who save the world.
That is correct. Even when they doubt themselves, even when they think they're too small, right, to be able to make a difference.
Yep.
There you go, Lord of the Rings. That's your character building book for 2016. So I'd love for you to share with us your experience of doing your SWOT analysis. And I'm actually going to start posting in the Facebook group asking people to, post their strengths. And, over time, we'll do all 4 sections. But I think it's a really good tool to help you focus in. So if you're in the middle of setting your goals, stop doing what you're doing, do the SWOT analysis, and then go back to your goals.
Yes. And one thing I think to keep an eye out for is do not assume everyone in your general space on the internet is a threat. That is almost always false. Almost always. Very, very rarely is there a piece of, is there a person who, is out there actually actively watching you and stealing from you. And there might be some of that, don't get me wrong. And that's horrible if it is. And that could be a threat, people stealing your intellectual property. But a competitor in business is an opportunity and should be thought of in such a way.
Right. And the thing that I found, especially in the online space, is that people like helping each other out. There's a lot of cooperation. If you're on a lot of email lists, you'll see the same people share, talking about other people's programs. And that's because, part of it is because there's an affiliate agreement in place, but part of it is because they see the value in it. They think that their customers will like it, and they see it as a supplemental product to what they're doing. So they don't see it as a threat that, if these people spend $1,000 on this person's course, they're not going to spend $1,000 on my course.
And if you help and give service to the other people in your space, you're going to find the good ones who are going to reciprocate.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. So check that out. If you're not in the Facebook group, you can join. It's facebook.com/groups/smallbizlife. And you can join the Facebook group. And we're going to work on goal setting for the next couple weeks.
Okay.
It's fun.
Sounds fun.
It is. And it's funny too, because, we talk about this a lot, like, at the end of one year, the beginning of the next year. But this is really something that you can do whenever you feel stuck. Whenever you feel like you're not making momentum.
Yes.
Stop. Do a SWOT analysis, right? Because remember, your skills are constantly changing. Your weaknesses are constantly changing. The landscape around you, the opportunities and the threats are changing. You could do this in the middle of July if you wanted to, and then set new goals based off of it. Yeah. But if you feel like you're stuck, don't sit and be stuck until January. You can set goals outside of January.
Yeah. Most definitely.
Okay. So, go out there, do a SWOT. Woot. Okay. What's our tip of the week this week?
The tip of the week this week is use a recurring event in your calendar to update your plugins. And even for people who go into the WordPress site all the time, maybe that's part of your model. They don't necessarily pay attention to the beginning. If you click on that little home at the top, it'll actually tell you how many things are out of date on your website. If you have out of date themes and you don't use them, like the ones that come with every WordPress installation, 2014, 2015, delete those. You don't need those. And if they're not enabled, they're not an issue. But your plugins are, and a lot of the updates that happen are strictly security updates to help keep WordPress safe if you're using a plugin. If the plugin you're using doesn't ever get updated, you're probably also using a bad plugin as well too. So look to your plugins, look to your WordPress installation, make sure it's up to date. The longer you wait to update, the more likely an update will break your website as well too. And you also don't want that. But a safe thing to do is before you do updates, if you back up your website, especially if it's a major WordPress update or something like that, make sure to do that because you might have to, if it does break your site, you don't want it to stay up there broken.
Right. This is something that you can either do in your electronic calendar, have this come up every week as something to do, and you can do a 25-minute Pomodoro block to, check your sites. The other thing you could do, if you use something like Nosby, Nosby has reoccurring tasks, right? And you can set this up as a reoccurring task. It will automatically go into your, your next actions. And then you can get that done.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take very long to do it.
No.
But
especially if you have one site, it won't take you the full 25 minutes. So you can screw around with some extra Facebook time or whatever your set of choices online.
Well, the thing is too, though, you might, take some time and look at the full list of plugins that you have and see when the last time they updated. What time period do you think is too long?
That's the problem. It depends on the plugin. Certain plugins, if it's a very minor thing that it does, might not need to update. And the other thing you have to watch out for too, when you get WordPress updates, is make sure that if it's something very basic, that it doesn't get rolled into WordPress and you no longer need the plugin. But usually the more complicated it is, the more actions, the more ways it's involved in your WordPress site. You're probably going to see updates on some of these things maybe every week or two.
Wow.
And you get, if you don't get it every week, there might be a change. When the biggest way to check is whenever you have a WordPress update, especially a major one where the first two numbers change, go out to your website, update everything, and check to see if your plugins are still working. If they're not, it's quite possible that it's no longer used. If you go in through WordPress and search up your plugin, or I believe you can do a shortcut to that from the plugins page itself, you can see if it's still a supported plugin or not. That's not 100%, but if it's not been updated in like 3 years, you can guess it's probably not safe anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I noticed like a lot of the big ones, like the SEO one that we use. Google AdSense updates a lot. So, and you kind of, as you're doing this, you kind of figure out, okay, Google updates this one once a month. The SEO one is every couple weeks.
A lot of times if there's major security updates that go out for WordPress, if the plugins interact with that portion of WordPress, they usually also have updates.
Yeah. So, so make sure that you're doing that. Make sure you're running those updates. It's really simple. You go to plugins, you click update all, poof, you're done. Yes. Okay. So this isn't like a super time consuming thing. Okay. So my app of the week is called Cam Scanner. I've had a lot of people ask me recently, they're interested in going paperless. My office has been paperless since we started it back in 2007. But it's really tough, it's easy to bring all this stuff back to the office and, you put in a big pile and then you spend half a day scanning everything. That's obnoxious, right? So Jeff actually found this great app for your smartphone. It's called Cam Scanner. I'll link it in the show notes. But what it does is it allows you to take a picture of a document with your cell phone, and then it will crop it and it will turn it into a PDF.
It really is amazing.
It is awesome. Like you have those times you're like, you need to, you're doing a mortgage refi and you need to, send a copy of your license, right? This is a great way to do it. Take a picture of your license, turn it into a PDF.
It will make it a huge image for them to see, and it will. And the nice thing is too is when you're building them, you take a picture, adjust it, take a picture, adjust it, and until you save the document, it will keep adding in pages to the current document.
Yep.
Which is important to know for two reasons. One, if you're doing a front and back of a driver's license, which sometimes people need both sides, that's great, or an insurance card. And the other thing is, if you don't want things to be part of the same PDF, either you have to make sure to go through until the new document's created. And my suggestion is to name them well. Yeah.
So, a lot of times when people are setting up paperless, they set up this system that has, one folder for every vendor they have. And then, they have the 2015 folder with 85,000 folders in them. With my paperless office, I just name documents well. And everything goes into a single 2015 folder. If I need to find something, I can just search for it. So, I know a lot of people that they've spent, weeks setting up this very complicated system. And at the beginning of every year, they have to reset it up again.
Yeah.
Just create a single folder and name your documents well. The nice thing with Cam Scanner is that you can have things, you can save your documents to Google Drive, you can save them to Dropbox, you can save them wherever you want to save them.
Share them to an email.
Yep, you can put them in an email. So it's a really convenient way that if you're out and about, you can take a picture of a receipt, you can, save it to your Dropbox or save it to your Google Drive, and you have it. You don't have to worry about losing the pieces of paper.
Or if you have a day job and your spouse needs a copy of your pay stub, you can just take a picture of it and email it to her. Then you don't forget to take it home with you, or you don't accidentally eat it, which I do that all the time.
Did you eat something today?
Yes, my pay stub. Extra fiber.
But yeah, it's a phenomenal app. It's so easy to use. And it's free. Free. I like free.
And there is a pro version. I've never even thought about buying it because it does everything I need it to.
Yeah.
And I might buy it at some point just because.
Because the free version's so awesome.
Yeah, and I think there might be ads. I think all it might do is remove the ads. So that might be it. But still, the free version's unbelievable if you can't afford it. And if you want to give them some love back, definitely get the pro version.
Yep. Well, we want to thank you for joining us again this week for another episode of Small Biz Life. Hey, while you're out doing your holiday shopping, if you're going to go to Amazon, visit Amazon through smallbizlife.com/Amazon. That helps support the show. It helps us keep the lights on, pay for the hosting for the podcast and all that stuff. And it doesn't cost you a dime. Do some SWOT analysis this week. Check to make sure that your plugins on WordPress are all set up, and check out Cam Scanner for your phone. And maybe if you get really stressed out because it's a stressful time, go get yourself a coloring book and some colored pencils. We'll have some recommendations in the show notes this week. Thank you for listening to Small Biz Life. If you enjoyed the show, please take a few minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher. Please visit smallbizlife.com to view today's show notes, take this week's poll, join the Facebook community, follow us on Twitter, or submit a question for the mailbag. Support the show by checking the resources page or by going to smallbizlife.com/Amazon whenever you shop.
This was Small Biz Life. This was small biz life.